Ah, yes, the noble dungeon master, creator of worlds, master of lore, slave to 30 tabs of notes, random name generators, and that one Reddit post about how economics would really work in a dwarven society. But that can't be me. No, sir. I'm what you might call a lazy DM. Not because I don't care. I do. Passionately. I just also care about sleeping and eating and my job and not spending 12 hours a day building a town my players are going to leave in 6 minutes because a guy at the bar mentioned a haunted windmill. So if you're tired of being the unpaid novelist at the table and want to prep smart, not hard, welcome in. Here's how I run my D&D sessions the lazy way and why it's the best thing I've ever done. I run my sessions now with one goal in mind. Minimal effort, maximum chaos. I prep only what I know the players will interact with, and I keep everything else just flexible enough to survive a party that can't go with 5 minutes without starting a bar fight. The first rule of lazy DMing is understanding who you're really prepping for. Your players are not noble heroes engaging with your world like thoughtful co-authors. No. They're chaos gremlins. They're toddlers with spells. And they're going to break whatever you build, no matter how well structured or lovingly detailed it is. So stop building lore they're never going to read. If you're writing 2 pages on dwarven mining culture, you've already lost. The players are just going to name the dwarf Beard Chad and ask if his pickaxe is magical. Prep for what's going to hit the table. Nothing more. My actual prep process, it's built around 3 things. The hook, the twist, and the cliffhanger. If I have those, I can run an entire session on fumes. The hook is your cold open. Something weird, dangerous, or suspicious enough to grab the party's attention. I'm talking stuff like a villager bursts in the tavern covered in blood, or the party wakes up in a different body. Something that cuts through the noise and immediately says, hey, stop checking your phone, the game started. Then comes the twist. This is where you make sure it's not just a one-note problem. The blood on the villager? Not his. It's from a ritual he doesn't remember performing. The body switch? Turns out one of them is in the body of a local noble who's supposed to be dead. It doesn't have to be clever, it just has to shift the narrative and make me go, wait, what? Finally, the cliffhanger. This is your eject button. When the session starts to run long or you've run out of gas, drop a big moment and cut. The ground shakes. The door behind you slams shut. You hear a familiar voice whisper your name. Done. Session over. See you next week. You've got 7 days, if you're lucky, to figure out what you've just implied. The best part of prepping like this is that you don't need to create anything from scratch. I use random generators like they're my unpaid interns. If you're not using generators, you're doing way too much work for a game your players are actively trying to derail. For names, I use Fantasy Name Generator and donjon.ben, both lifesavers. For NPCs with quirks and goals, I'll even grab a few from Kassoon's NPC generator, which lets you add jobs, motivations, even secrets. For dungeons and maps, Donjon again, because I'm not drawing anything from scratch for players who will 100% ignore the locked door and tunnel into the boss room using Mold Earth. And for encounters, I use Kobold Fight Club and 5e Tools Encounter Builder to generate balanced combat that I will then immediately make unbalanced by adding something stupid, like a goblin on stilts named Craig who throws snakes. He wasn't in the module, I just thought it would be funny. Trust me, it was. One of the laziest and smartest tricks I use is the rule of 3 when creating a new town or location. Every place gets 3 things, and only 3 things. 1 interesting landmark, 1 NPC with a weird secret, and 1 local rumor that may or may not be true. That's it. If the players start digging deeper, great! I'll flesh it out on the fly and act like I had it planned all along. If they leave town 5 minutes later to chase a random rumor about a haunted goat, and trust me, they will. I haven't wasted a weekend writing up population stats. Example, Sludge Hollow. Landmark, a massive well that never runs dry, even during droughts. NPC, Crankle, a one-eyed gnome who talks to frogs. Rumor, if you whistle at night, the well whispers back. That's all you need. The players will do the rest of the work for you. Another key trick to lazy DMing, outsource your memory. Every session, and I mean every session, I ask the players to recap what happened last time. Not because I forgot, though let's be real, I did, but because their version of events is what actually matters. If they remember the weird bar fight and not the political intrigue subplot, guess what? That subplot's gone. It's dead. I'm not chasing their attention with plotlines they didn't care about. But if they bring up the cursed dog statue from session 1 that I dropped as a throwaway, Guess what? That dog statue is now the key to an ancient evil sealed beneath the city. They think it's all planned. It's not. I'm just reacting to their chaos like a very tired improv coach. Now, people always ask, yeah, but don't you need an overall plot? And sure, kind of. But you don't need a tight plot. You don't need a multi-arc, foreshadowing-heavy, prophecy-laced epic. What you need is a moving target. A rough idea of the kind of problem the world is facing, who's behind it, and how things might go wrong if players ignore it long enough. I call this the collapsing pyramid method. You start with something big at the top. A cult trying to bring back a dead god, a kingdom on the brink of war, a cosmic rift leaking weird magic. Something broad and dangerous that can escalate slowly in the background. Then, you stack it downwards into layers of stuff the players might actually interact with. Local corruption, strange artifacts, propaganda, rogue mages, weird mutated wildlife. You make the top of the pyramid very far away, and the bottom full of juicy, touchable hooks. That way, even if your players ignore the cult leader for 6 months of sessions and spend that time running a bakery, they're still in contact with the effects of the bigger story. And here's the key. You change the plot to match what the players care about. If they're obsessed with a weird NPC you made up on the spot, cool, he's important now. If they adopt a cursed cat, that cat is a spy for the villain. If they completely ignore the Civil War subplot you spent 2 hours sketching out, let it die. The plot isn't sacred. The players are the plot. You're just here to keep the walls from falling down too fast. I also recommend writing just 3 sentences for your campaign arc. Not a script, just a loose structure to hang chaos on. For example, a forgotten god is waking up and her influence is warping the world. Her cult is in search for ancient relics to complete the ritual. If the players don't stop them, she returns and reshapes reality. That's it. Everything else is scaffolding. If the players get distracted by a talking goose and accidentally delay the plot for 10 sessions, fine. That cult is still out there. They're just a little further ahead now. It creates pressure without railroading, stakes without a timeline, and it gives you a ton of freedom to change your mind when your original villain turns out to be less interesting than the party's new best friend, Jerry the depressed lich who sells bagels. And speaking of distractions, when the party slows down or you need to buy time, I use what I call panic combat. This is the part of the session where everyone's stalling and someone says, "Can we go shopping?" And you, the DM, have a quiet breakdown behind the screen and summon an owlbear just to feel something. Panic combat is how I get the party moving again when they're starting to drift. Or when I need 45 minutes of structure that doesn't involve heavy improv. It doesn't need to be tied to the plot. It can just be weird and tense and something to get the dice rolling again. Maybe they stumble across a bounty hunter tracking one of them. Maybe a bag explodes and it's full of tiny goblins. Maybe the horse they've had for weeks starts talking and no one knows why. Don't explain it, just make them roll initiative and worry about the why later. The real trick is learning how to build the illusion of depth without doing the actual work up front. That's why I only prep the first 10 minutes of every session. Just the opening scene, the vibes, and the immediate problem. Everything after that is reaction. If they go left, cool, there's a swamp there now. If they go right, guess what? It's the same swamp, but from a different angle. I've reused the same map 3 sessions in a row before, just flipped and renamed. Not a single one of them noticed. They were too busy trying to train a giant mosquito. Look, when it comes down to it, lazy DMing isn't about not caring, it's about knowing what's worth caring about. Players are going to remember the weird NPC with a pet rock, not the 3 paragraphs of lore about the founding of the Elven Dominion. So prep for the rock guy. Make him interesting. Give him a connection to the plot after they've decided he matters. It's not cheating. I just call it being smart.